We're not gonna be shady, just fierce. Hello, how are you? Welcome to FauxPods with Lola. Welcome back if you're coming back, and it's good to see you. Low-key, I have always been passionate about this subject. I am super excited to talk about this. I realize that it's a big topic, so that's why there's going to be a part 1 and a part 2. I realize that it's a huge fandom. So we're going to be talking about the wonderful, fabulous, amazing, inspiring world of drag. Not only talking about the highly commercialized, kind of mainstream drag, I'm talking about like the essence of drag and why I really respond to it as a creative person. Mainly, I want to open up a conversation. If you are a fag... I almost said if you're a fag of dram. So if you're a fag of dram, I'm not wrong. If you're a fan of drag, I would love to open up the comment section to people who want to talk about it. I did a deep dive, but drag has been happening for a long time. So open up a conversation, like I said, and talk about it and commiserate. And I would love to find my other drag-minded people. And I'll get into what that means exactly. So I have loved dressing up since I can remember. My grandma had a huge closet full of clothes that spanned many decades. I would dive in there. I would get a beautiful frock on. I would parade around. I would lip sync in the mirror. I would do my hair and lips. Could only really wear lip gloss back then, and put on some Lee press-on nails and sit in the mirror and have an interview. I was both people. I was both the interviewer and the fabulous person being interviewed. So I totally get drag. Grandiosity and the glamour and the make it all up in your own imagination and fucking run with it. I love that. And that's the essence of performing, I would say. That is at the heart of any theater performance. So I'm well versed in all those facets. At a young age, the only drag experience, like real life, that I had was he was a funny man, is what my grandma referred to him as back then. He would dress in women's frocks. We weren't allowed to go there on Halloween, well, we were told not to, but I always did because I knew he was fine. I sensed no danger. And everyone was just judging him on the fact that he liked to wear women's things, and that's silly. That was the only real life experience I had. I grew up middle of America. Had I been in New York, I would have snuck into every drag show I could have, and that is guaranteed. About 2 months ago or so, I realized that I had this kind of skewed idea in my mind about what drag was, who drag queens are. I haven't ever really dove much into drag king because I'm the other way. I have a very strong thread of masculine, but the glamour puss of it all is really appealing to me as well. That's just my blend. There are plenty of blends and none of them are wrong. But I realized that I had this idea in my mind that drag itself is kind of elitist and that you're not really allowed, biologically considered woman, I guess you could say. And please let me know if I misuse terms. I in no way mean to offend anybody. The terminology changes quickly. It's changed a lot in the last few years. Honestly, I'm just trying to figure it out and say the right thing, but sometimes I don't. So if I ever do, just let me know with tact, please, because you get more flies with honey than vinegar. So this is my honest representation of myself and what I feel, unlearning what was inaccurate about drag and re-educating myself about what drag is, where it came from. So let me know in the comments if there's something I've need to know or anything like that. Please do. I also had an image in my mind that drag queens were angry. And this stems from something I will speak to in a minute, that it was kind of anti-woman. It was men kind of trying to take over the woman space, which I didn't really fully feel that, but there was notes of that in the ether from, way back. So those little things were stuck in my mind. And I knew that was inaccurate. Not surprisingly, as the universe will do, when you ask, you shall receive. I had an intention to learn more and figure out. And then, lo and behold, Willem. But Willem Belli, who, if you don't know who Willem Belli is, she's a force to be reckoned with. She's one of the most ferocious and amazing drag performers, I would say, personality-wise, and just what she represents. I think Willem is a pretty good representation of what I know drag to be, what I have discovered drag to be. But I'll get to more of that later. So Willem's channel popped up on my feed. I had seen Willem's performances throughout the last, 20 years. Like, ooh, Who is that? They got that star power. Realness. Willem and Willem's character, he just is the character. He's just the star. In Nip Tuck, in Star is Born, in East Siders, which is one of my all-time favorite shows. I referenced that in my Queer and Now video where I talked about being pan. Then I, for some reason, dropped the ball and I didn't follow through and didn't realize that he had his own YouTube channel. So I'm just now rediscovering a wonderful, amazing performer and person that I didn't realize was who they were, if that makes sense. Willems World, which is a really good place to dive into if you're wondering about drag, because Willem knows a lot of drag performers. I'm sure there's beef, you know, from time to time, but Willem is friends with and associates with all of the drag community, or as much of it as she can get her hands on, I think. I got a lot of insider info and a lot of insight into drag just by Willem's channel alone. But I didn't stop there. Looking into white drag history versus people of color drag history, I'm always going to go with the people of color drag history because, and this is an inflammatory statement, so if I offend someone, that's not the intention. This is my own opinion. You know, white folks like to rip off people of color and say that they're the ones that were the first ones to do absolutely everything, and it was usually a person of color, male or female person of color, that did it first and did it better. So within that, not that white drag history, we should keep them separate. That's not what I mean. When I did history of drag kind of look into things, mainstream mentions of the histories of drag didn't talk about this one specific person. William Dorsey Swann was the first self-proclaimed queen that would hold a ball, ran a very well-known faction of queer culture in the 19th century. So we think we got it tough. He got blamed for prostitution, and that wasn't what he was doing. William Dorsey Swann was on the president's radar. Grover Cleveland, is that the president? Despite that, when she was incorrectly incarcerated, she appealed, pled not guilty, and they still incarcerated her. Shocking, I know. Miss Swann referred to themselves as a queen. Back then, the terminology for a queen wasn't just like, a ruler, it was a leader. The term queen was given to someone who was a leader within the community, did amazing good things for the community. I think that's really amazing, and I think that's more fitting and more in keeping with drag tradition than maybe the modern idea. Brings me to my earliest memories of drag related things would be another pioneer, RuPaul's song Supermodel, and broke the top 40, meaning it was a big hit. That's the first time that a drag performer really was mainstream and not a punchline. I didn't quite understand what RuPaul's persona was. I heard Supermodel and I was just like, oh, you better work it, girl. Like, I better. I got so excited and so amped up. RuPaul is one of the most glamorous and beautiful people that I had ever seen at that time. I was enraptured. And then my brother callously walked by one time. He saw I was listening to the tape and he was like, that's a man, right? I know he meant it to be like, hey, get your head out of your ass. Don't think that that's a woman when it's a man. But what he did was make me even more obsessed with it from that early time, which, it's a different time back then. Things have changed a lot, and I'm very, very happy. RuPaul, he was a pioneer. And I would just walk around at recess time with my little Walkman in, being like, you better work, cover girl, do your thing on the runway. And then other kids would just be like, what is she doing? Even at the age of 10, I was into it. So then my next stop in my teenage years, when I saw Rocky Horror Picture Show for the first time. If you haven't seen it, please watch that movie. So you have Tim Curry just being one of the sexiest, iconic characters that ever existed. That was my first taste of, wow, I think I am into all kinds of stuff. I was attracted to every character in that movie, even Riff Raff, even Eddie. Just as much Susan Sarandon's character as I was Rocky, as I was Frankenfurter, as I was Brad, as I was... And it's because they all get tarted up in drag at some point in the movie. It just plain did it for me. I want that level of excitement and glamour and feeling comfortable in your own skin for everybody. That was my first taste of like, one can achieve that. I moved to LA in my early 20s and I saw one drag performance. It was kind of like there was a drag MC at, I think it was like an open mic night type of thing. It was supposed to be edgy and interesting, so it was like live commentary on an open mic night. So they had a drag performer doing that. It was like 20 years ago. This was a while ago. This was before drag was a mainstream thing. There were some people in the audience. I'm assuming they were straight and, you know, cis in association, and they didn't get the whole read and shade and all that stuff. They didn't understand that. So they were heckling her. They were heckling the drag performer. They were making fun of what she was saying and doing as she was doing it. One, that goes against absolutely all of the theater etiquette that I was trained and versed in. And two, who the fuck are you to think that you can interrupt someone who's got full drag and is saying witty, interesting observations? Who the fuck do you think you are? It hurt my heart. And then after the show, I believe the drag performer was outside. It's kind of hazy because sometimes your memories are clouded with like drugs and booze and deep emotional shit that you don't remember. My queen was standing outside. I was too afraid to really say, hey, I loved what you did up there. Fuck those people in the audience. I was afraid to say it because as I was walking up, she turned to someone and just went off on him because they were probably fucking with her. I didn't understand that part. All I saw was her just checking somebody and being like, you better back the fuck up. I don't know you. This was a performance. Like, go fuck yourself. And I respected that interchange, but I just was like, okay, now is not my time. Like, I needed to shut up. But that stayed with me, and I didn't go see live drag again. I watched it on TV, be very excited for it when I saw it remotely, and I regret that. And I'm sorry to, you know, the drag community and drag performers that I wasn't smart enough to realize what was happening at the time, and that I didn't take your side and have your back. I'll go up to you after and tell you that I'm sorry that happened. It just didn't seem like the right thing, but I should have. And from now on, I most assuredly will. It kind of coincided with like, well, maybe drag isn't where I belong. Maybe it's not for me, and I don't know why it wouldn't be for me. But even though I have a deep respect for it, it's like hip hop music or, you know, certain things that it's like to the outward eye, I look like I would be one of the heckling assholes or one of the dumbasses that wanders up on stage and tries to mess with the drag performer while they're performing. In no way would ever do that. My self-growth journey has really helped me to realize that I was putting myself in categories that I didn't belong in. Why the fuck wouldn't I belong? If you have a respect and a love, you know, yourself for something, then if it speaks to your soul, then that's enough. But I just felt like my outward appearance, I would be judged for it and read in a bad way, not read in a good way. And so I stayed away. Any fandom that you just kind of jump into, there's a huge faction that's like, okay, bitch, but you weren't there from the beginning and you don't know. And I agree with that. I'm one of those people that feels like you should at least have a very deep resonation with it. If you're just jumping on the trendy, like, oh, look, it's cool. That's as bad as the heckling in that audience that one day. You're making a spectacle of something that deserves respect and deserves its own right, because drag performing is top drawer entertainment in every area. I can see how, you know, I mean, for me coming into it the way I did, even though I already knew enough about it to really love it, the terminology, huge catalog of drag performers, the whole drag race phenomenon that kind of took drag and just really knocked it really far into the mainstream. It's intimidating. Oh no, like, I was a little scared again, like that one day. And then I was just like, no, dude, like I deserve having a good time and having fun with this as anybody else does. So what the fuck? I think something is intimidating if you take it seriously. If you're slagging it off and just being like, oh, whatever, then yeah, you feel like you can just jump in and do whatever the fuck you want. And I didn't feel like that. I still don't feel like that. I just feel like I know more now because I took the time to figure it out. I would never claim to be an expert. I have a deep affinity for these talented souls that pour their heart and soul, blood, sweat, and tears, and live this grueling schedule to be a drag performer. Start gigging out of control. Deep respect. It takes a huge amount of guts to do what they do, a huge amount of talent, and a huge amount of passion. Even when the drag isn't that good, it's not because of anything physically. It's because they're afraid and they haven't honed. But you got to start somewhere. So any performance, any type of art, you have to start somewhere. I always try to be kind and supportive to everybody, whether they're newbies or seasoned veterans at it. I try to give everybody the same level of reverence and respect. You got to start somewhere. And now, disclaimer, I'm going to talk about one more area, and then I will pick up in part 2 and talk more about what I've learned about drag. I don't watch Drag Race. Yeah, I know. It seems very counterintuitive to someone who saw RuPaul rise to fame and who, there's several reasons, but the main two reasons that I don't watch Drag Race is, one, I tried to watch it in the first season. I was really excited about it. I'd heard about it. I caught an episode. It just seemed very exploitative to me. Exploitative? Seemed like the queens were being taken advantage of in some way. And I can't explain that. I can't explain why. It just didn't feel like how drag feels to me. It didn't give me that exciting, titillated, I'm on the edge of something really amazing feeling. I felt sad watching it. I felt badly for the people who were competing. And then that brings me to my other reason. I don't think that these super talented, creative people should be judged the way that they are when they've worked really hard to get to their own pinnacle. They've worked really hard to get where they are, and now they're being judged on what kind of fake eyelash they use, or they're being judged on one challenge versus this huge cachet of amazing performances that got them there. But I do understand that it's helped drag be way more accepted and way more of a mainstream idea. It's helped kind of bridge a lot of the misconceptions about drag and then the realities. But also, it's reality TV. Reality TV is just all in the edit. It's 100% in the edit. No matter how you present yourself as the show is going on, how they edit things together, and sometimes the niche that they try to shove you into before you even have a chance to be yourself, because you're that type or whatever, and that's the type that they need for their narrative, for the show to be funny and interesting and watchable. It just feels like that's not the drag I want to get to know. It's a nice showcase, it's a good jumping off point, but it just didn't sit right with me. I am aware of it, I'm aware of winners, I'm aware of, and that's just from other drag performers. That's just the drag community talks about it so much, and I totally get it. Cultural phenomenon, like I totally get that. And it's no shade to anybody who's on the show. It's no shade to anybody who loves the show. I hope you don't come for me too hard. Not my thing. So I think I'll leave it here for now. Next drag video, we will talk about what drag is to me, like the other side that I've seen, that I've experienced, that I've educated myself on, which is the drag queens themselves and the culture itself. So thank you for being here today. My drag homage. I've never done lashes to completion before, so they're a little janky. They are Suck Less Face and Body, which is a Willems company. And it's amazing. They're really good lashes. Even though I suck at them, they're still holding it down. I hope everybody has a wonderful week, and I will see you again soon with part 2 about what I've learned about drag.